Hello everybody, I'm going to do a review on this air compressor I picked up from Harbor Freight. I'm also going to throw some other general information in here that might be useful to some folks about what CFM means, what does that mean to you, what to expect out of a compressor, this, that, and the other. Well, this is their 21 gallon, 2.5 horsepower, 125 psi cast iron air compressor. This one is item number 61454. They have 2 or 3 different model numbers of this. They typically would come out of different factories, which is why they have different model numbers for things that are seemingly the same. So this is the one I'm reviewing. They claim a $219.99, $179.99 on sale. You cannot use 20% off coupons on things like air compressors, toolboxes, things like that. So I found online $149.99 super coupon, so that's what I applied. Now I've already broken it in, I've already assembled it, and I've already gone through some mock testing with it for my application, and it seems like it's going to do the job well for me. So we're going to get into it and move along. Okay, they're claiming it to be a 2.5 horsepower, but it's wired off 110, and it draws 14 amps roundabout, so you mathematicians out there can do the math if that's enough spec for you to see what the actual horsepower output is. Well, out of the box, there's only a few things that have to be installed. Number one is the wheels. A simple bolt, washer, a steel spacer sleeve, stick it through the hole in the wheel, put the nut on the back side. I did not pre-lubricate these yet because I installed everything away from my shop here. I'm going to be actually moving this around on my properties and whatnot, so I can use it as a job site compressor and get more work done with it than my little Porter Cable pancake compressor, which was really my driver for buying this in the first place. Another thing that needs to be assembled is simply install the handle here. It came with 4 socket head cap screws. It did not come with a hex key to tighten them up, so you will need to supply your own. Slide it in, line it up with the threads, put the 2 in each side, tighten them up, done deal. The air filter needed to be installed. This is all plastic. Just simply thread it in the hole in the head, make it hand tight, and you should be good to go. There's a foam filter in this can. This is not really the best design for one of these. I'm sure you might be able to source out a better one if you chose to, but I'm just going to run with it as it is for now. There were stickers all over this thing saying install the oil before the first run. Apparently maybe they've had a problem with people not reading the directions or the manual and installing them, and they're burning them up. Who knows? It did say in the manual prior buying this that the oil was not included, but I did get a bottle in the package for this one, and it was exactly how much I needed. There's a sight glass here, and you kind of want it in the middle of this bullseye right here. Anywhere from the top to the bottom is fine though. There was just enough. You take this cap off right here, that's where you fill it. And then this tiny screw right here is where you would drain it. There is a break-in procedure. I deviated from the manual a little bit, and I'll explain the way I did it here momentarily. Okay, once it's filled up with oil, the pump needs to be broken in. Their procedure states to put one of these connectors in the end of here, run your regulator all the way in to get the max airflow out that you can, plug it in, and flip the switch. That's the on auto switch right there, and this is of course off. And then it will fire up, and you're supposed to let it run like this for 30 minutes according to them. Well, I deviated a little bit based on my experience on how I actually break in new engines and stuff that I would build for a car. If I'm wanting to seat rings and the internals and whatnot, I'll actually put some stress on it. So the way I did it was I let it run for about 20 minutes at that idle, and then I slowly backed this off to reduce the air pressure coming out here and increase the pressure into the tank to about 50 pounds, and I let it run for a minute or so like that to put a little bit of a load on it, and then I let the pressure back down and let it bleed off while it was still running, and then I backed it out to like 50 pounds, 60 pounds, 70 pounds, all the way up to 90 pounds. I let it run for a minute or two at 90 pounds, so I did cross the threshold of about the 30-minute mark, but I like breaking things in that way. And that is the break-in procedure that I use, just FYI. This is one thing I do not like, is the placement of the tank drain right here. Periodically, I do it every time I use something like this. You need to open this up and let the tank blow off to let all the moisture and water out of it. This seems like a great place for that, but it's not. The appropriate place should be dead center at the bottom of the tank, because the ends are bulbous. They're convex. So when moisture gets down into the bottom of this tank, you're not going to get it out all the way here, and you're always going to have a little bit of water in the bottom. So what you're going to have to do, or what I'm going to have to do, when I do blow the tank, I'll open it all the way up, and this is loosened to open. And then after the air pressure gets down so far, I'm going to have to physically tilt the compressor over to get any collected water in there over to this area so it can be blown out. My preference, like I said, would be to have this bung all the way down in the middle, and then I would put on like a street elbow with a piece of pipe, and right out here I would put a ball valve so I could blow the tank just like that. That was a modification I was going to do. Now it's pointless, but that's just one thing I do not care for. The pressure gauges seem to work pretty well. This is your tank pressure here. This is how much pressure would be in the tank. It should shut off, I think, somewhere around 125. I think this is maybe 130 on this one. And then the regulator here would regulate your output pressure coming into your hose. It is very responsive. It seems to work well, and it seems fairly accurate. This is a safety pop-off valve right here. I can't see if it has the PSI markings on it, but I'd guess this is probably 150 to 160 pounds. If the tank pressure gets that high, and for some reason this pressure switch does not shut off properly, it will blow this open until that pressure drops, and then it will close itself. If it's continuously running, it will cycle and do that. This is not to drain your tank. You don't stand here and hold this. This is only a safety device, so you may pull it from time to time just to make sure it moves and it's not locked solid for some reason, but this is not anything that you really should be messing with. Well, this is one problem I had with it, and it's really no big deal, but it's just a nuisance. When you install the handle here, this valve is directly in line with this handle, so unless I bend the hose real tight around here, I can't even hardly get a hose into this. So what I'm going to have to do is put a wrench underneath this pressure valve and carefully turn it to move it to where I can put the hose out here beside it. That's just something you need to consider. There is another pipe that's attached to this for the unloader, and I'll point that out as well. This is the line right here for the unloader I was speaking of. I need to turn this pressure valve this way, so I just need to be careful in here and not break or destroy anything that's made up here. That also allows me to note that unlike a lot of compressors you'll find out there, they'll have like a PVC line or some type of a butylene line or something on it, a plastic line. This is all plumbed in, looks like aluminum tubing, so nothing really here to break down over time. That's a modification I would have ended up doing if there was any plastic on here. Here's just one note on stretching the truth. They call this a cast iron compressor, and it has a cast iron component in it, but it really is not a cast iron compressor. The crankcase down here is aluminum, as well as is the head. It's aluminum. There are two brass plates here, which should be the reed valve plates right here. But this is the cylinder, and the cylinder is cast iron. Well, this valve here has me a little bit baffled. If you have a zero pressure tank and you start it up, this is going to flutter and spit out pressure until the tank pressure reaches about 10 or 15 pounds, and then it will snap shut. And when it comes up to its cutoff point and the compressor shuts off, the unloader releases the pressure off the head, which is what this is directly tied into right here. So the next time it goes to start, it won't have head pressure on it, and the motor can actually turn it over, and then it will build it up. I've never seen something like this. Like I said, the unloader usually takes care of all that, so I don't know exactly what this thing is supposed to do, but that's what it does. Alright, well I'm getting ready to turn it on and let you see this valve fluttering, and I'm going to note the tank pressure on when it actually does snap shut. You might want to attenuate your volume because this thing is super, super loud. When it is running, you're going to want to crawl out of your skin if it's in the same room with you. Or if it turns on when you're not expecting it, you will jump out of your skin. It is loud. You know, a lot of people say, well, it's not oilless, so it's not going to sound like an oilless compressor. Well, that is not true. This is not a belt-driven compressor that chug, chug, chugga, chugga, chugga all along. This thing screams at you just like an oilless, regardless if it has an oil in the crankcase. So, here we go. 3, 2, 1, screaming. Alright, well I don't know if the camera did that justice, but it is loud, so be prepared if you pick one up. Now that seemed to have snapped shut at about the 20-pound mark. I was a little bit off. So I'm going to fire it up real quick and see if it automatically snaps shut or if it flutters more. That's hot. So here we go. Yeah, and that immediately shut off. So I'm not sure exactly what this is. Like I said, based on my experience, the unloader down there should relieve the head pressure off when the pressure switch snaps shut. But that's a new one on me. I don't know. It looks like the pressure switch is adjusted properly to my liking. It cut off dead on at 125 psi and it cuts in at 90. Now, as far as how long it takes to fill the tank, for anyone who might be wondering, I timed it out at a 0 tank to shut off at right around 4 minutes, maybe 4 minutes and a few seconds. And as far as the reclaim time, providing no air is escaping, I brought it down to 90 where it cut on, stopped the air supply, and it took dead on 1 minute to recover up to 125. That's not too bad.